Hey, good evening, guys. I found a couple of YouTube videos I want to share with you guys here. Here's a gentleman that he has a very good, detailed, thorough explanation on the whole CBDC, the central bank digital currencies here. I've got two of his videos that I want to share with you guys. They're very good, very detailed. Really, the whole deal about with the central bank digital currency is it transfers our banking will transfer from having a direct relationship to a bank to directly more with the Federal Reserve. Okay. At the end of the day, it's giving the federal government more power and control over our money directly. Okay. This is kind of where freedom dies. It really does. Freedom dies through this. Now, when they do it, um, we basically it's not a direct relate. It's not a cryptocurrency. Okay. So what it is it's basically really transitioning us into a cashless society infrastructure. Okay, so that's what we're doing. It's basically they call it a central bank digital currency. That's just a fancy word or label for us to really become completely cashless. And again, we have a direct relationship with the U.S. Federal Reserve. And keep in mind, the U.S. can't even manage its own debt. Our debt, our deficit is through the ceiling. It's in the multi trillions of dollars. Okay, and on top of that, look at what our federal government already did with the movement of money. Anytime now they transitioned the movement of money for tax reporting from 10,000 US dollars clear down to 600. So anytime you have $600, coming to your account, you're now automatically reported to the IRS for taxation. So keep in mind. So really, with this CBDC, freedom is dying. Let me get these videos started, and then I will cover some of the key points with you guys.
All right, guys, awesome news. Just released was a Federal Reserve paper on their plans and ideas and criticisms and questions about issuing a central bank digital currency, and this is key. They have asked for feedback from the American public. There's actually a section you can click on to submit your comments. So in this video, I'm going to go over number one, what were some of the key things talked about in this paper, and number two, the feedback that I hope we will all be giving. Ready? Let's dive in. Central bank digital currencies are being researched and trialed all around the world right now, with China being kind of furthest ahead in their trials of a CBDC, and the Federal Reserve seeming like they want to be kind of last with actually issuing or rolling out a CBDC. So first, what is a CBDC? It's a central bank digital currency. Money's already digital, so what's the difference between the digital dollar today and an actual CBDC? The difference is bypassing the banking system. When you go buy or sell things, money comes in and out of your account with a bank, and it goes into other people's accounts with a bank. Where does the bank keep all their money? They keep their money at the Federal Reserve, which is the central bank. The central bank is the bank for banks. The government also keeps its money at the Federal Reserve in the Treasury General account. And so there are a few institutions, relatively few, who have an account directly with the Federal Reserve. A central bank digital currency opens the floodgates and allows individuals and corporations to have their own accounts held directly at the central bank, which bypasses the banking system. This does a couple of things. Number one, it allows scalpel-like fine-tuning of the economy. They can adjust monetary policy and potentially in the future even fiscal policy in real time. They can assign new dollars to people's accounts that can only be used for specific things or that are blocked from being used on specific things. Like in China right now, if you use the CBDC there, you cannot use it to buy Bitcoin or gold, and you couldn't use it to buy Bitcoin even before they had outlawed Bitcoin. So they are able to set very specific parameters on how the money is to be used that's assigned into those accounts. Now, technically, banks have this power already. If you make a transaction that they consider fraudulent, which, it would probably be fraudulent in this case, they can pull that transaction back. They can stop it from happening. If you run a business, that business is engaged in the marijuana business, or ammunition, or firearms, or gold and silver. A lot of businesses that deal in these types of industries, they're getting their business accounts shut down from banks who do not want their don't want their clients participating in these industries. And so banks already have this power, but it's better to have 100 tyrants competing for power than one tyrant who has it all. And bypassing the banking system, allowing individuals and corporations to have accounts directly with one entity that is controlled by the government, gives a greater degree of power assigned to a select few to cause money to flow into certain areas of the economy, or to stop money from flowing into certain areas of the economy. Another thing this would do, it would allow an advancement of the system, of the dollar system, especially cross-border payments. This is one of the reasons why El Salvador just adopted Bitcoin as legal tender there, because the dollar-based monetary system is old, archaic, and slow. And so researching CBDCs right now, they're coming up with ideas and methods of how this would bring the dollar system into the future in terms of speed of transactions and security and cost of transactions. Now, what are the concerns that the Federal Reserve brought up about this? Number one, it would suck money out of the banking system. And right now they're in the business of supporting the banking system. I think that as we move forward into the next crash and the fallout of that next crash, I think the banking system will be largely nationalized here. It's happened time and time and time again throughout history, different cultures, different countries, different times. It happens over and over again because the banking system eventually cannot support the weight of the government burden, the debt and the monetization of that debt and the inflationary monetary policy. Banks can't survive. And so we'll see a nationalization of the banking system, which will allow then bypass that completely. You don't have to worry about the profitability of the individual banks by moving primarily to a CBDC because you've nationalized it and they're no longer private enterprises. And so that is something that will probably be a catalyst in rolling out a CBDC nationwide. Now, the other thing that the Federal Reserve highlighted here is that stable coins right now are being issued by private companies that are competing for the future space of the CBDC. Companies are issuing stable coins, which is basically a cryptocurrency, one for one backed up by dollars or things like treasuries. Now, as a side note, this is something that is going to become somewhat of a Trojan horse for supporting the dollar, supporting treasuries, limiting interest rates going up, and then will become a backdoor into CBDCs, because all of the money, eventually they're going to regulate out of existence any stable coin that is not fully backed by dollars and treasuries. That means all of the transactions, all the money held in stable coins, really when you trace that back, it's really being held in dollars and treasuries. All that money, trillions of dollars, going to buy treasuries, keeping a lid on interest rates. So the entire stablecoin market will end up being something that supports fiat, ironically, by keeping rates low, keeping demand for the dollar. Any that do not operate that way will be illegal. They'll be regulated out of existence. And depending on how things go, then they might just do a full swap and say, okay, well, now you have to use a CBDC. And once they've built the system where abide by our rules or you'll get shut down, everybody then abides by the rules. And then now they have control over the system. And then if they want, they can just do a full swap with the CBDC in the future. So what to do? And this is where you come in. The Federal Reserve is asking for our feedback. They're literally opening up for 120 days comments about the future of the financial system in America and around the world, and they're asking for public opinion on this. Crucially, because the Federal Reserve has stated they don't want to move forward with this without legislation from Congress. They want Congress to specifically authorize and command the Fed to move forward with this if they do move forward with this. And so they're collecting public feedback right now. This is a crucial time to go in there and start listing our feedback and say absolutely do not do this. The data collection alone is a tyrant's wet dream, not to mention the control that you have over every single American's and corporations' transactions, allowing them to do business or not. It is unprecedented the amount of control that will be given to any entity that is able to issue and control America's central bank digital currency. It is a power that we do not want to exist, regardless of whether it ends up being used for good or not. The capacity for it to be used for evil is too great. And this is a very good opportunity to go submit our feedback and say, absolutely, please, never, ever, ever, this is a bad idea. We do not want this. In the description below, I have linked both the post from the Federal Reserve that gives you a link to the full 35-page PDF paper on this, and on that page, it includes the link for submitting your feedback, your comments, asking them to not move forward with a CBDC. As always, really appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great
So as you guys see, he gave a great explanation. He put kind of right down here, and I'm going to put these links for all the federal government links. Okay, one for the 35-page paper on it, where if you guys want to submit feedback for the 120-day feedback, I'll put all that below this video that I do for you guys. Okay, so I just wanted to. He gave you a very great detailed explanation. He thoroughly exposed to us through his work of how much tremendous power or additional power and control it's going to give our federal government, and for the amount of evil, how this will just compound their level of evil that they can submit towards us. He's got, again, I'm going to post his links down here that I'm going to, you kind of see me highlighting them right here for you. I'm going to put those below the video. Here is the second video.
Everybody can see what is going on with our neighbors up north right now, despite the media's attempt at distracting people from it. And even though many hoped that elected officials would come to their senses about tyranny, instead they voted in favor of what could turn out to be the beginning of their end. Because systems cannot support the weight of tyranny. And everyone who can is right now attempting to get their wealth out. And that is the key. Right now, some of the wealth still has a chance to escape, because today, complete financial repression is not possible. But all of that changes with a central bank digital currency, a CBDC. So in this video, I'm going to explain very simply exactly what a central bank digital currency is, why governments so desperately want it, and every way that it is very different from the system we have today, terrifyingly different, because a CBDC grants totalitarian control to anybody who wields it. And as the Rothschilds said, let me control a nation's money and I do not care who writes the laws. Ready? Let's dive in.
Imagine this scenario. You buy a little known cryptocurrency at $2.82 from a major exchange.
Brief history. Banks started off as gold vaults. You stored your gold with the bank and you could go get your gold with the receipt, or you could use the receipt itself as money. That works great until the bank commits fraud and loans out your gold to somebody else. You go and try and get your gold. Guess what? It's no longer there. Bank run occurs, bank collapses. This should have been outlawed. Instead, it was nationalized with the invention of the central bank. In order to prevent a local bank from collapsing when it commits fraud, might as well create a bank of the banks, a bank account where banks can store some gold so that the bank isn't susceptible to a bank run. If they get a bank run because of fraud and lending out the gold that was your gold, they can just go and get some extra gold from the central bank. But you can't eliminate risk, you can only transfer it. And instead of this risk that was isolated to individual banks, now it had been transferred to the entire banking system. Fast forward a couple hundred years, it had been centralized even more, and the Federal Reserve was the central bank of the entire world. And just as had always happened throughout history, more receipts were issued, more claims on the gold was issued, then there was gold to back it up, and the rest of the world went and started a bank run on the United States, the Federal Reserve, and said, "Give us our gold that you promised us." And in 1971, Nixon said, "Nah, we're going to keep it." Now we live under a fiat currency system where governments can create as much currency as they want with no restraints on anything physical like gold. However, the banking system is built on hundreds of years of legacy systems and systems that are in place that were built on real restraints. As if the currency is actually backed up by something. As if banks actually need reserves. As if banks won't get a bailout from the money printer next time they need it. Your money is held digitally on a bank's balance sheet as if there's something actually there. As if it is more than just ones and zeros on a computer. As if they take your actual money and when somebody needs a loan, they lend it out. Newsflash, they don't. Banks lend money into existence. Every loan they make is money that did not exist before. This system is bad. This system is fragile. This system accelerates the concentration of wealth. It transfers wealth from the savers to the borrowers. And as bad as a system as this is, a central bank digital currency is exponentially worse. Not only is it worse, it is categorically different. And it is where we as people need to draw the line in the sand. Now, all lines are arbitrary in some sense, but if this one is crossed, most likely the only way out or back out of it is with complete systemic collapse. Remember how I said in the past you gave your gold to the bank and the bank had its own gold account with the central bank? It's the same today, although not with gold. You have an account with your bank and the bank still has an account with the central bank. A central bank digital currency, on the other hand, bypasses, nationalizes, restructures, and renders obsolete the current traditional banking system. Every individual and every business will have a wallet or an account directly with the central bank. Instead of opening up your Chase app or your Bank of America app, you'll open up your Fed Wallet app. Now, why is this so radically different and so intensely dangerous? Because the central bank maintains a legal monopoly on the creation and the destruction of a nation's currency. Now, that power is already the most dangerous power on earth today. Pair that with the ability to directly control every transaction and account of every individual and business, concentrated and isolated among a couple dozen unelected ivory tower bureaucrats. I cannot express enough how terrified everybody in the world should be of this. The entire purpose of a central bank digital currency is to give more control over how much money exists and exactly where that money exists. This money is programmable to allow a level of fine-tuning and scalpel-like economic policymaking at a degree never before seen. Right now, the central bank has to rely on bank lending and government deficit spending in order to insert new dollars into the economy. They have very little control over where those dollars end up. It's a sledgehammer approach. A central bank digital currency allows them to control that down to the penny. They could hypothetically give everybody a stimulus check that expires in 1 month in order to boost spending this month and hold off a recession. They could get everyone a food bonus, money that can only be spent at a grocery store who also has a wallet open with the Fed. They could hypothetically limit how many dollars you spend at a gas station during a specific time frame like a month if gas is getting too expensive or if gas supplies are running low. They could overnight shut off any person's ability to make any transactions whatsoever if you were deemed a criminal or dangerous or a terrorist. They could deposit dollars in your account that could only be spent on stocks if the stock market was crashing. They could prevent transactions like buying specific stocks if that stock looks to them like it's in a bubble. Right now, our neighbors up north are seeing their banks turn into the muscle for the state. The state is relying on brother versus brother, private business versus citizens. And right now, it seems pretty effective. Now imagine if a couple dozen unelected ivory tower bureaucrats can do all of this with a few strokes of the keyboard. No international wires, no usage of an ATM, no more approved business licenses without an account at the Fed, no more buying from any businesses unless you use your CBDC. And once this starts, you can imagine now how difficult it is to get out of this, to undo this, to backpedal and move out. You won't be able to use your CBDC to buy any gold. You won't be able to use any to buy Bitcoin. You won't be able to transfer any of your wealth out to make an investment in a different country in order to purchase citizenship by investment. You won't be able to rely on it in times of crisis to buy an airplane ticket out of the country or at least to specific countries. All in the name of economic stability. All in the name of preventing money laundering. All in the name of national security. All of this in reality accomplishing the death of democracy and the fatality of freedom. A central bank digital currency is where I draw the line, because anybody who crosses it may not be able to cross it back. Start getting your wealth out of the system right now while you can, because as we speak today, there are people who said that could never happen here, and they woke up and they realized it did. Links for resources in the description below. As always, thank you for watching.